To the Stargate Finance Community Call, where we discuss proposals and ideas that will help shape and govern the Stargate protocol. Feel free to join the conversation on stage anytime you have a question by clicking on the raise hand button at the bottom of the screen. You'll also chime in through the voice text channel in Discord or any of the chats for those listening in YouTube or Twitch, as those channels are aggregating the messages all together here. Just a reminder, this is not financial, accounting, or legal advice. Please do your own research. Okay, lots to cover over the past couple of weeks here. We're going to go through a bunch of stuff, just updates and whatnot. And then I know there's a bunch of questions, so we'll leave that till the end. So we will get to all of that get towards the end here. So just looking back here in September, 232 million in volume for the month. And we had an all-time high of transaction count at over 67,000. Yeah, lots of like even on like one of the dailies there, like a huge like daily spike there as well with like 8,200, over 8,200 in one of like the high peak days here. So lots more traffic coming across here. Really stoked to see that. October's already off to like a huge start. It's already got like a higher volume than a lot of other, or like a higher transaction counts than other months before. And we're only like, what, 5 days, not even 5 days in. So really happy to see all this. Obviously I think like this Galaxy and Optimism, the Galaxy Optimism quest has helped a little bit with that too. So it's good to see that we're, gaining either, more, bringing more people to the platform and just like gaining awareness and helping drive traffic. So been pretty happy to see that, and things are going out well with that. As far as the Galaxy and Optimism quest, lots of people participated in that. There was over 26,000 have already claimed just the Galaxy, the Galaxy Optimism quest and have completed the quiz and have claimed that NFT. And yes, the Gator ONFT has also ended as of yesterday. I know there's a bunch of people who were unable to claim because the Galaxy, there was like an upload error on their part. It just wasn't getting updated for some reason. So there's a few people who were unable to claim. We're looking into some ideas here. We're looking into being able to open up that claim window for those who were affected. So we might have an option here for that. I'll follow up with a couple others today, but we are hoping that we can open that up for those who were affected and give a time window for that. And then we're just going to close it up, and then we'll wrap everything up for Friday. And that whole the Stargater campaign with the Galaxy, the Galaxy Stargater campaign will wrap up as of Friday here. So hopefully that's a little update for anybody there that's was affected. We'll try and get you square here, but still looking into that. And just keep your eye out though. Like these did see a lot of great stuff here with obviously the volume and traffic across Stargate. Looking to do some other quests and whatnot as well. So stay tuned for that. I think a lot of people really enjoyed this, and I think it'd be cool to have to get a little more of this stuff kind of going on a regular cadence. So stay tuned for that. Got some ideas there. Integrations. So as of, I guess, like the latest ones that have happened here, ChainHop is a composable omni-chain liquidity aggregation protocol. They have integrated Stargate as well. And Atlantis Loans is another one here, an open source and non-custodial liquidity protocol for earning interest on deposits and borrowing assets. They have brought in the bridge widget integration. So nice to see a couple others that are bringing Stargate to their users, and just more integrations, more traffic, more everything. So other stuff here is the VE STG staking dashboard. I know everyone is really wanting that. The ULN V2 upgrade kind of took precedence over a lot of this stuff here. And I mean, obviously everyone wants that. So just gonna try and pivot to that as soon as possible, and I guess try and make that happen here as soon as November. I don't know, Primo, can you add any color there?
I think the main thing is when ULM v2 went live, things got pushed slightly November 1st should be totally hittable. It's really just a function of development time now. Really, it's just making this contract to distribute, and it's not overly complex. It just has to get done. So it will be done soon.
Wicked. Cool. So yeah, there's the latest, and we will try and make that happen. I know everyone's even has been really looking forward to this. So I guess for previous proposals that we've had here, so with SIP 15 launching the STG liquidity on Optimism via Arrakis Finance Vaults, those are now live. So those vaults are ready to go, or are have been ready and are filled here with half of the protocol on liquidity that was on Optimism. So with all of that in there, Arrakis has set up that vault. They will be managing it. It's kind of looking like it's between 25 cents to $1 is kind of that range that they're working on. Give that that gives a pretty wide range for now. Obviously that should help with liquidity, maybe giving, I think it's going to give people better, hopefully less slippage and whatnot, as it was just like a full range before, so from 0 to infinity. However, after removing the funds from UniV3, found out that there was like 64K worth of fees to be claimed. So that's pretty wicked to see that there's like that much. I guess I was maybe a little bit shocker for me. I didn't really think that there'd be that much fees accrued so far, just from from the UniV3, on that's just on Optimism. So pretty cool that we can that's being added back to protocol and liquidity. So slowly growing out more depth to this, and that was pretty cool. So hopefully now with and I think that was only like a 0.3 fee, and this will be a 1%, 1% fee now, I guess, swap fee in this pool. So even with that tighter range, the difference in slippage and whatnot should be, I hope it'd be fairly similar for users. But hopefully more to go to the protocol. So give that a shot if you're interested. And if you want to either participate in that, or just even if you're swapping, just give us some feedback on that. Let us know how that all works for you. And SIP number 16, new assets, Diefrax, SUSD, and LUSD. Just another thing here, just obviously just going to try and get to that as soon as possible. Glad that we got the 15 out of the way, and now 16 will be kind of up next here, and work towards that. And those pools will be incentivized. Obviously, there's some metrics that need to be kind of, or analytic, I guess, figure out where, how much liquidity, or sorry, how much incentives need to go to each of these pools to kind of attract the correct amount of liquidity. And just obviously setting up things on the front end and back end and all that. So that'll be next up here. And okay, next, and this kind of ties in, I guess, into, I'm sure, a lot of the questions that people have here as well. But this proposal here as well to add layer 0 tokens, so like OFT tokens to Stargate. This is from this was on Commonwealth right now. That's it's been up for a little while here, but basically adding OFTs to Stargate Bridge, proposing that Stargate support native OFT tokens in the swap list while charging a small convenience fee, proposing two basis points there for moving them, and then kind of just some parameters there to kind of decide which OFTs, with like transfer volume and kind of like a small period of time to kind of look at it. Obviously designed to include significant OFTs, and with the OFT model, don't need to have liquidity. So that kind of like prevents the need for incentivization of pools, and just having like a small fee to figure out where that can go. So I don't know. I think that's like a pretty cool way that we can start introducing a lot of this stuff. Like obviously you can move STG across Stargate right now, so it would be kind of a similar concept. Just being able, any of these new assets, bringing in a fee and putting that and deciding like where that fee goes. Anything else to add there, Primo?
No, I don't think anything significant to add.
Cool. Anybody else here with questions for around that here with the OFTs? I'm sure that people want to hear about. We do have like a list of questions here from others here with in regards to the USDC, because obviously that kind of ties in directly here with that. So yeah, maybe we can just jump right into those questions, Primo, and maybe that'll help kind of let people understand.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we talked about this yesterday. I think Q&A is great. If not, I'm happy to give some independent sort of thoughts and updates. But if people have questions, let's just do that. It's more fun, anyways.
Yeah, cool. What I'll do is, because there's been this list here from HackMD, I can actually just forward that to you as well. Let me copy this and. So then I can send you this so you can take a peek at it, and and I'll just like go through some of the questions here to start. So basically, how does the Omnichain standard announcement by Circle USDC affect Stargate? And I guess like A, B, C, there's kind of three parts to this. So OFT seems to remove the need for Stargate USDC liquidity pools, as bridging can now be done with zero slippage through the burn mint mechanism. Then is Circle planning to migrate existing USDC to the OFT standard? And if the team agrees, are there plans for other stables currently listed on Stargate to move to the OFT standard? So that's kind of the first question that kind of in three parts there a bunch of people have.
I think that's a totally valid question. I think the first thing is, I guess nobody really knows what the end implication is of all of this, right? Technology in general moves pretty freaking fast. I think Circle, to be clear, Circle's thing is like their own independent thing that is kind of opening up to a lot of different bridges to use. And so the question is like, what is the most efficient? Like, what will that end state look like? And where will everybody go? Like, bridges as a whole need to make money. So all of the other bridges are still likely going to be charging their fee. It does allow for Circle to give access to some party who could make it basically zero fee or do less. But then like integrations become tricky. So the way that I think about this is there are like many billions to tens of billions of dollar businesses that are basically fundamentally like aggregators of other services. So make integrations at the enterprise level extremely easy. And that's sort of what I think. So, all right, USDC goes, let's say they go completely, OFT model. There's no need basically for any liquidity now. USDC is just like elastic and free flowing around all chains. What does that ultimately look like? So one, it means that Stargate no longer needs to have standing USDC in the pools, which means it no longer needs to have emissions. That's, I don't remember the exact amount, but let's say 60 to 70% of Stargate emissions are now reduced. It means our protocol and liquidity can be migrated from USDC to a different asset. So let's say USDT or Frax or DAI or any of these others, and we'll be by far the deepest liquidity pools for these assets. So that will give, sort of tremendous volume boost in these assets there. It also means, so it doesn't take away the ability to use USDC in Stargate. What it does is likely commoditize the fee. And so the question is, what is the right fee? So now you get the asset for free, which is like great. If we could have every asset at zero cost and just charge some nominal bips on top of it, like if the protocol could do that, then I think we would be super thrilled. Everybody would be, because now we could add all of these longer tail assets without. So if everything is moving towards sort of OFT version, now you can add all of these longer tail assets without needing to have or incentivize liquidity. So when like new chains want assets there, they need a bridge, they need assets to be free flowing. That stuff becomes kind of hard and kind of annoying, because you're like, okay, well, who is Stargate putting up emissions for this? Is the chain putting it up? Are the asset creators putting it up? Where that comes from and how the incentives to get it standing there becomes like pretty tricky on adding new chains and longer tail assets. So one, this makes it so you can go to basically every chain pretty easily. Two, unified interface for users who definitely want a consolidated interface. They don't want to go to 15 different interfaces to bridge 15 different assets, but also for developers, right? So if you're somebody, I don't know, say, SushiSwap, some integration that we already have, right? And you want to use this in the middle, there is some fee that you will pay to not need to do every integration. So say USDC and USDT and DAI and Frax and MIM and sort of every single asset that's stable or even non-stables goes to a model of OFT. Like Sushi independently certainly doesn't want to have to integrate each of these individually with their own interface, right? That's one, a huge amount of dev work, two, a huge amount of surface area in terms of like needing to manage risk, right? A mistake in any of those is sort of like catastrophically bad, and every protocol needing to do this independently is like pretty miserable. And so this is where I talk about kind of traditional companies that look like this. There is a premium that people will pay to have a unified interface that basically manages this, manages the risk, manages the integrations. They only deal with one interface, one integration, and it basically has everything on the back end. Now the question is, what does a fee capture for that look like? Is it 1 BIP? Is it 2 BIPs? Is it more? Is it, and I don't think there's a clear answer to that yet. I think the market will kind of figure out what that is. That's my general thoughts. Yeah, I don't know. I think in general, Stargate as an entity, like, is already category leader in the thing that it's doing, but nobody just like gets to category leader and sits there and just like has a monopoly forever. You have to keep innovating. So the question is, what does that look like? Is Stargate the central hub for OFTs? Is it the front end with like a bridge as a service for new chains who need it? And now you can sort of go to new chains and have first touch bridge that everybody's used to on new chains immediately to bring assets over there. Does it, there's a whole bunch of different ways that have been being thrown around of like additional things Stargate can continue to innovate on. And Stargate V2, do we do things like enable flash loans in the pools to have additional money? Do you do things, there's ways to monetize the underlying standing pools. There's like so many more things that are not being done right now that can be done. So I don't know. Those are my general thoughts. Obviously, I don't think anybody knows fully how, like, USDC is basically an experiment, and we'll see how it plays out. I think there's a lot of interesting things that it can do. I think the need for no emissions is like very, very compelling, but it does mean that fees are going to get commoditized some. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I think like the part you bring up about integrations, like that's something that we've always known. We like having integrations and having like Stargate composability. That is like a huge win, and like not having that like light lift. So like once something is built in and like it's just composing Stargate, however Stargate can bring across, like whether it's an OFT or whether it is like these liquidity pools that it needs to move it, like it's this liquidity transfer protocol, like this, it just simplifies everything. We know that like there's such a technical debt load with all of the protocols, and having the need to like go through audits and everything else, it's just such a pain point. This, the ability to compose all of this through Stargate, I think simplifies everyone. So yes, I think going back, like you say here, that whole fee structure, just figuring out like what the protocol can do from there. I think that it's like, yeah, that this is actually a real win here. Plus like the emissions too. I'm seeing like ARM Bridge is more about volume and less about emissions. I mean, that's kind of like where we're getting to, especially if you don't have to like incentivize certain pools. So, okay, we've got some other questions here. I'm just going to try and get through this list of stuff that came in from HackMD. Thank you everybody for bringing those questions in ahead of time. So the next one here was like, also, I think we've kind of addressed it here. If more stable coins move to using OFT, what will Stargate serve going forward? Yeah, I think we've covered that, just like how, the composability aspect of it and whatnot. And then just like, the next question here being prioritizing layer 0 over Stargate. And I think like, we touched on this earlier here, just the ULN v2, that update, that was kind of, that probably addresses that question there. Now obviously being able to yeah, put a lot more resources and focus back to Stargate here as well. Then will integrations and addition of the other assets be feasible to able to replace the lost volume due to USC switching to an OFT? Yeah, I think like again, it's just also that's been covered in this in kind of like Primo's answer here earlier was just like, yeah, having more integrations, all that sort of stuff. Like we'll see because again, just like the lack of friction in order to like compose this and make this work. API messaging calls to layer 0 endpoint. Oh yeah, there's do you have those questions in front of you there, Primo?
No, I don't. Where should I be reading? I have some D questions.
Yeah, does that link work for you that I sent you?
Okay, I see it now. Let me see 1 second.
So we're down about halfway.
Okay.
Down to the API messaging there.
Okay. But the API messaging calls to layer 0 endpoint explicitly accepts a 0 parameter. Our understanding is that 0 is a layer 0 token that is yet to be developed, which can pay for layer 0 fees. Given the concerns expressed for the OFT standard in Stargate, how does the team see relationship between the STG token and the 0 token? So, I think, again, pretty reasonable question. I think this kind of stuff has been discussed really at length. I think from the beginning, the goal was that the two are largely separate entities. So it was that if Stargate, and this has been upfront from the very beginning, like if Stargate had additional, I don't know, basically layer 0 is a protocol. It's open and permissionless. It's meant to be entirely agnostic. It can't pick winners. If layer 0 is picking winners and choosing favorites and doing all of that, then you have an ecosystem that looks much like some greedy dying layer 1 or just like whatever that is, versus something like Ethereum that's sort of like open and just encourages all builders. So Stargate was always meant to be it's a protocol. It's its own thing. It lives on top. It has its own merits. It was has seen a ton of different things. Fastest growing DeFi protocol in history at launch, which is a crazy milestone to hit. Definitely deepest source and best source of liquidity right now. And growing largest transactional volume month, although a bunch of that was from the Galaxy integration. But like with anything, layer 0 is kind of like an underlying protocol like you see a layer 1, and Stargate is really more of like this liquidity transfer layer for DeFi. It's a protocol that lives within the DeFi ecosystem. It doesn't have, there's a world where Stargate could, so I was going to say it doesn't have like, a compelling case on, let's say, NFTs or something. But there's a world where, Stargate can do whatever it wants at the end of the day. There's a lot of things that it can become. I think right now, the great things that it has is large transactional volume, deepest source of liquidity, probably at this point the most large-scale DeFi integrations. And the question is, what do you do with that? So where do you go? How do you monetize the underlying layer? There are things like, there are all of these different potentials on what that might look like long-term. I think, hopefully, there's going to be somebody coming in soon who's basically going to take kind of the reins of Stargate, not completely, but just like really be the driving force of somebody who's saying like, here is what I think the direction of Stargate should be, or like, here's this list of 10 things that I think would triple Stargate protocol and liquidity and triple or, quadruple Stargate transactional volume. And I think once we can go through and sort of find out like what that person is and do it, I think things, I don't know. You guys saw Sushi had their head chef announcement. I think there are a bunch of things that Stargate can do that will be great. I think there's a clear distinction between the two in like Stargate and Layer 0. So the tokens don't have any direct relationship, right? If there's, let me think of an example. I don't know, insert Ghostly Ghost, right? Ghostly Ghost is a great example. Built on Layer 0, omni-chain NFT, moves across chains. Like, how is Stargate tied in there? Like, what would you envision that look like in terms of like their ghost moving across chains? I just, I don't know. I can't think of a world where there's like a tied relationship. But yeah.
All right. Thank you for answering. Hopefully that kind of covers for everybody there. And speaking of ghostly ghosts here, and I see a question here around the ERC 1155. Yes, and actually the Stargater that has just been put out through the Galaxy Quest, that is an 1155, and it is an ONFT. So if you had that, you can actually claim and play with that and move it across networks if you haven't done that either. If you just go into Discord and grab from the announcements, you can see the link to go to the Galaxy Stargater website, and from there you're able to bridge on there. So if you were looking to move it around and want to try that out, please give that a shot. It's the Gator changes as you move it to other networks, and just like the Ghostly Ghosts, they were the first ones to kind of do that. Obviously those are 721s. This is an 1155, but gives you the kind of the same experience. These next questions here, with the,
next question, more OFT related. Yeah. When bridging 100 OFT tokens, does it burn 100 in the source chain and mint 100 in the destination chain? Right. Yep, that's right. Really, the OFT is just like a stand. So layer zero's contract coordination, OFT is just a standard for contracts, basically triggering that. It's just saying, hey, proxy OFT if you already exist, and just OFT if you don't exist. And really what you're doing is just burn one, take the receipt of the burn, mint on the other, right? So it's a way to make the supply sort of elastic for any given asset. And then the other question is, oh no, that's not a question. So those are all the written questions. Do we have people come up on stage, or what is are there no more questions? Yeah,
if anybody else has questions, please bring them in through AMA text questions, or if you're listening in on YouTube or Twitch, feel free to ask them there. Otherwise, put your hand up if you want to come up and just ask something directly here. Happy that we brought in a lot of this stuff ahead of time so they can just be addressed and people can ask ahead of, beforehand. What other questions have we? I don't know if there's anything else. A few more written in here. What other ones did we have? Let me just scoot back here. See one here. Bringing someone into help with Stargate. Obviously you've been very active with all this and helpful, but just looking to bring in somebody else as well, I think is what you're alluding to. Just getting another somebody to help with.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is right now there's literally too many cool things to implement. I think governance has a bunch of things standing. I think one of the most recent governance things is add all OFTs to Stargate UI, which I think is great and should definitely be done. Another one, obviously, like the VE stuff has to get done. The ad fracs, it's hard to find really, really, really good people. But I think it makes a lot of sense to use more development power and more somebody who's just driving really ear to the ground, only goal is integrate with everybody and drive max volume, right? That should be the only thinking. And I think you just want more driving forces for that. Hey, what's up?
Hey, Primo. Thanks for allowing me to come in and ask some questions. So you had mentioned about the OFT standard, and it makes a lot of sense to say that, the various DeFi apps don't want to integrate to multiple standards. But can you clarify what exactly is the OFT standard? I mean, it sounds like it's something that Layer Zero has developed, but is that something that, for example, Circle USDC is utilizing in their cross-chain transfer protocol, or is that something that's very different?
Yeah, so OFT standard is like the Stargate token. actually. STG is the first OFT, right? And it was this first concept of like, this is really kind of the first protocol that's launching on like 7 chains simultaneously. So like, what the heck does that look like? Because normally people would have like an individual token. You say, okay, this chain is canonical. And then we have like wrapped token here, wrapped token there, like whatever, right? Where we deploy on 2 chains. There's like no easy way. We need external bridges to do this. And now it was like, okay, we actually don't need to do that. We don't need to have wrapped assets or anything. Like directly in the token contract, you can move STG. Now, 100% of people move STG by going to the Stargate website, right? There are many people who are like triggering this in the contract. So this is actually a perfect example of like, well, you still need it like some UI and some reasonable way to do this. So everybody does it. Now, STG itself is sort of like zero fee within the Stargate protocol. So maybe that is why everybody does it there. Maybe there was a fee that would, other front ends would spin up, or somebody would host one for free, or whatever that like might look like. But yeah, so STG, the token itself, is a perfect example. But all OFT is this standard of how do you do that? What does that actually look like in code? And now that the idea, like since STG, the token launched, and this was sort of this concept was first talked about, you can look at basically every other messaging protocol is implementing something similar. They might call it different things, but it's all really the same thing. It's just like taking this idea and moving it forward. So even outside of layer 0, this is something that is like, catching on as a general idea.
But I mean, okay, so how does that compare to, say, what what Circle and USDC is doing with their cross-chain transfer protocol?
Yeah, so Circle, I need to think a little bit about what Circle has fully disclosed. Okay, I'm not sure what I can say. Circle, right now, their current approach is they have basically, it's more or less a way that bridges can wrap, like they're saying, hey, we're going to release some functionality that allows certain USDC to be moved. They already have, right? You already have some central API that you can go to, and you can say, hey, I've wired money, mint me some USDC here, or I'm burning and I'm going to take a wire out. So they've had like this mint and burn capability, or like mint and redeem capability for a long time now as a totally centralized process. And now they're saying, okay, we sort of want to open up this process. And so we're going to make a way that there's functionality that kind of anybody can use. And then people can sort of hook into that to make this underlying process kind of easier. And I'm not sure, again, I'm being a little bit opaque here because I'm not sure exactly what they have described publicly or not. But it's a little bit different. Generally broad concept, or like moving towards that broad concept, but theirs is like maybe a middle point in the ground between the existing and now. Yeah.
I guess the question I was curious about is, obviously, Circle USDC is doing this. Is this something that can basically extend into, say, USDT, BUSD, or any of the others? I mean, why do they have to use layer 0's OFT? It sounds like something that other tokens or other projects can just come out with their own, or basically copy whatever Circle has implemented.
Well, you need to move the message, right? That's the biggest thing, right? So you need to actually move. It's like, why doesn't every project have their own bridge, or why doesn't every project, how many times have we seen that gone wrong? People like don't want to and should not be rolling their own. And this is for like a huge amount of things. And also standardization just helps a ton, right? Like look at the introduction of ERC20 versus like the early Ethereum having no real standard. There's a bunch of reasons.
Could this be a race towards what is the most dominant standard? Because obviously, if you take Circle's cross-chain transfer protocol, CCTP, and can that be the more dominant standard over time versus, say, OFT from layer 0?
So
where does that lead?
Circle's implementation is basically just an API. They're saying we're taking our existing centralized construct and we're just going to open it up and let other people do it. So they're not trying to release a standard. They're not trying to, like, nobody else is sort of adopting this methodology. It's not like an open methodology or standard. It's not something that USDT or somebody, they might implement the same type of thing. Again, a bunch of people might do this. And then, if you move to decentralized stables, so your Frax, your MAM, your DAI, or all of these others, like, they're certainly not going to have like this whitelistable centralized API. So all of this will move towards standardization. And I think Circle is the first step towards that. But I think they're just taking, they're kind of a big company who has already been doing this in the way. And they're really trying to like make this process more DeFi native and more just like crypto native friendly for how do they take it from centralized parties on the Circle website doing this from their bank accounts to like, okay, now the two chains themselves are the bank, and you're going between sort of a bank on one chain to a bank on the other, kind of like you would do inter-country remittance.
Okay, so the actual implementation is subject to each individual party that wish to implement it, then you're saying?
Yeah, again, what Circle is doing is different than, say, what many others might do. It's more of like, well, we'll see. We'll see when they actually, when everything rolls out, what the final thing looks like. I think right now is more of an intention to say, hey, we're going to do this. Here's like our path to doing this and why we think it's sort of interesting and important. So let's see what the final implementation looks like when they roll it out.
And as regards to, you had mentioned this, having someone come on board. I mean, aren't you the most qualified person to push this forward? As far as Stargate is concerned?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I don't want to okay, I don't want to say too much about this person yet. If we do end up if this person ends up coming on board, I want to check with them on what I can say. But I promise you that extremely qualified, would be all sort of working together on this. It's just, again, you just need more voices in the room of ears on the ground, constantly going out and the end goal is every integration. And again, you gotta see around every corner. You gotta keep innovating. So what does Stargate V2 look like is something we've already talked about a ton internally, and something we're going to start sort of fielding questions out in the forums at some point in terms of like, what are the killer features as we see this landscape evolve that like make Stargate better, right? I think capital efficiency is absolutely one of the key ones, where right now, especially when we're at billions before we wound emissions down, we were sitting on $4 billion of liquidity within the protocol, but the protocol was only functionally needing 300 million at maximum. And so all of the excess was just completely underutilized. So what can you actually do with that that's interesting? And there's people have been trying this for a long time in terms of underlying. This is everything from, opening them up to flash loans and charging a fee where you have access to flash loans on basically every chain, which is interesting. There's the concept of yield farming yourself with the underlying and giving the yield sort of back. So with whitelisted, other whitelisted protocols. So some of it sits in Aave, and so it sits in, whatever. There are definitely protocols who do that, and a bunch of other things in between. But I think capital efficiency is absolutely one of the more interesting things. And you have this huge pool of latent capital that is amazing to have there when you need it, but definitely not being utilized at all when you don't. And so what can the protocol do with that that's interesting? So I think one of the big things is just continuous mind share of both talking to every other protocol and iterating on what does ideal state look like what does the next path of innovation look like, in the same way you watched Uni go from V1 to V2 and V2 to V3, and each one looking kind of drastically different, but continuing to increase sort of broad capital efficiency of how the protocol functions. I think that has to be the goal with Stargate, is just continuously pushing hey, what what does this actually look like, and how do you stay ahead of everybody? And I think capital efficiency is always going to be the reigning sort of marker for that.
No, I think capital efficiency is certainly very important. It's definitely something we need to keep an eye on, but also we shouldn't take our eyes off and I'm not saying you're taking eyes off the actual transaction volume. And to that extent, obviously we've had pretty decent spikes in number of transactions, but if you look at the chart, it's really started in September 20th. And, coincidentally, that's also when this whole optimism, Gator NFT project started. Can we get some kind of a split in terms of, how much of the or how many of the transactions coming, say, from, say, the DeFi apps versus individual, people that are using the Stargate UI to send tokens back and forth? Just some more clarity, and so that for transparency's sake, we want to see what's going on. It's just something that we were hoping, or I think, speaking for myself, I was hoping that Stargate or STG Scan, I think they used to provide more granularity in terms of data. But since they've left the scene, this particular function provided by Stargate's UI is probably not as up to par as what they provided previously.
Yeah, super interesting. I think we can try to get those guys to add another layer of data. So maybe ping Tangle with everything that you would like to see. I think we all wish Name was still working on the analytics side. So very much loved Name's work. I think that's obviously a great metric. I do think this month's transactional volume, a bunch of it, is clearly driven by the Galaxy stuff. So I think for the past month, those splits will likely be largely skewed towards that. But I think just in general saying, hey, what are the number of integrations? What do the split between how many people are hitting the Stargate UI versus being driven from the Stargate widget versus being driven from native integrations on other sides? That
would be super helpful.
Super interesting layer of data. Yeah, 100% agree. So Tangle, I'm assuming you got all of that. Let's see what we can do with Gons and everybody to potentially add that layer on the UI side. That's going to get messy on that page. It might need its whole own separate page. So yeah, okay.
Yeah,
cool.
There could
That's
be
a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there could be another analytic, even if it's a separate analytics thing, or maybe through Dune or something. We can look into some ideas here on what that needs to look like. Just so it doesn't get messy on the main page. But obviously, you can see 10 or 13 pages worth of data on the Stargate overview page. So you can kind of go through and see the past transactions. So all that stuff is there. And yeah, just a matter of querying it and putting that together and being able to package it would be good. So we've got that, and we'll start kind of a running list here somewhere. We can follow up with that afterwards of just ideas that would be good to have in there. So we've kind of got this captured for now, and we can keep building on top of that. Anything else there, Aesop?
No, thanks very much.
Cool. Thank you. Jordan.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. You've got a couple of things for us.
Yeah, so I think very nice summary. Thanks both, especially on the USDC front. I think from my point of view, and chatting to a couple of other people, I think where the confusion came from was it was a little bit like you ask your friend to come hang out with you, and they say, no, I'm busy. And then later on, they're like, oh, no, I'm doing something. You find out later that they've gone out with another friend of yours. It was like... we all thought that the USDC volume was happening on Stargate, and then Layer Zero, who we thought were kind of a bit more closely. Well, we assumed that Layer Zero wouldn't be bringing out a separate announcement with Circle. So I think hearing you speak about it, the clarity has been that Layer Zero and Stargate are they're built with the same technology. There is underlying the same team, but is it fair to say that the goal is to move these forward as eventually more and more distinct projects, and that Stargate is very much moving to become its own thing, and Layer Zero is going to strive to remain neutral? I asked this because I think a lot of people bought into Stargate because that was the best way to buy into Layer Zero and the things you guys are doing, as well as Stargate. And it sounds to me from everything that you said that there might be more announcements like this where Layer Zero is doing something that doesn't necessarily benefit Stargate exclusively, and you yeah, we just have to continue to evaluate Stargate on its own merits rather than bundled with Layer Zero. Is that a fair assessment? And is that kind of the view of the rest of the team? Or have I got that completely wrong?
No, I would say that like at the end of the day, Layer Zero must remain agnostic. I firmly believe that is the only way a true protocol, like at the technology sense, wins long term. Like, absolutely must, right? So, like, if somebody comes and says, "Hey, I want to," let's say somebody wanted to come build another bridge, and there are like other bridges that exist in the world, and some of them are actually migrating from their current stuff onto Layer Zero. So, let's say another bridge wants to come. Like, there isn't a world when Layer Zero should be like, you know what, F you, we're not going to show you our docs, or like, nobody's going to help you do anything because this is, competitive to Stargate, right? So that just like shouldn't happen. And so Layer Zero always will have the stance of like complete agnosticism. Layer Zero is a piece of technology. It's already meant to just be firmly open such that anybody can build on it, and anybody who has sort of ideas or things that they're going to implement on top, like the Laser Labs team will be as helpful as possible in helping them build on top of the technology. On the Stargate side of things, there's a couple things. Like, okay, I say that people are building on Layer Zero. How much do I want to tell of this? There are other bridges and other things that were like competitive early on who are already building on top of Stargate. And I think that is by far the strongest signal of anything else I've seen. I think Stargate wins by being this central liquidity layer. That has to be the goal of everything. Now, there are, again, maybe technology disrupts this. Maybe there's something else that, I don't know. I can't predict sort of every innovation that's going to happen. But yeah, Stargate absolutely is its own entity. I think Stargate very clearly pursues two things. It pursues protocol and liquidity and transactional volume, right? Just like any DeFi protocol. Capture the most fees and increase protocol and liquidity to the maximum. And I think that's orthogonal to what Layer Zero, not orthogonal, but, let's say separate, parallel tracks to what Layer Zero is doing, where like, yeah, Layer Zero doesn't necessarily care about accruing protocol and liquidity. It cares about pure messaging volume across the entire spectrum of Layer Zero and driving adoption.
Right. Okay. So Stargate really is the application of Layer Zero in pure the finance domain, liquidity, and that's what's going to be focusing on. So when you talk about the OFT standard, did that really, was Stargate really taken into consideration at all when developing that standard, when pushing that standard? Was that literally just, hey, we think this is a useful way of bridging?
Stargate was the first OFT, right? Stargate literally was like the blueprint for the entire OFT standard. So from the moment that Stargate launched, we had talked about, hey, this token itself doesn't actually need underlying pools of liquidity, right? There is no standing liquidity for Stargate. Stargate, the token itself, exists on every chain, is completely elastic supply, and can be moved freely to every chain through Layer Zero, right? And so that was, I think I've written about this probably 100 different times. You can find many tweet threads of me talking about this and everything. So Stargate, the token, was like the original conception of sort of what the OFT is. So I think that has always been the case of like, hey, even in a world where you give people pure messaging, Stargate is like, you need liquidity. You need access to actually, like, to do anything composable between chains. You need this liquid transfer layer. You need this accessibility. And like, that was what Stargate provided. And I think that still is the case. But in terms of like the token or the standard or anything, that's always existed from day one. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. Very clear. Really appreciate the clarity. Really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. Anyone else here with further questions? I thought I saw another hand that came up in the audience, but I think it's down now. But if not, no big deal. We can, take any of these questions in afterwards via text and try and do our best to answer them as we go here throughout the day. But yeah, anything further? Going once, going twice. All right, cool. So yeah, thank you very much, Primo, for like unpacking all that. I hope that's answered enough for everyone. And yeah, that's been great. Probably a great time here for us to wrap up. If you are listening in on YouTube, I do want to try something here. We've got it using this new protocol called Rev, and they are currently trying to. They're offering POAPs through YouTube. So I'm trying to see if we can, if you're over in YouTube right now, just hit !Rev and see if it will. You've got 2 minutes right now here to try and claim. I'm not sure if it's going to work for me or not. This is all just like kind of a beta testing here, but if you're over there in YouTube, just try and give it an ! REVV. And then afterwards we can try and claim it, and try and claim afterwards. So yeah, I don't know if it's going to work for everybody that's in, if you're over in Discord, don't worry. We are going to do we'll have Guild set up here. It's running right now as well. But yeah, this has been obviously live streaming to YouTube right now, so you'll be able to catch it afterwards. You can follow up if there was anything else throughout this conversation, if you want to listen back and check it out, or and just catch up with it later on. And of course, just keep ready for next week here, or next 2 weeks. We'll have the other community call, and then just like and subscribe on YouTube, please and thank you. And any further questions here? I know we've gone through a bunch. Let's if there's more questions coming in, we'll do that. We'll look into the dashboard, obviously dashboard we're going to keep working towards. And just for the analytics and whatnot, please hit me up afterwards. We can even start something in like I don't know, in one of the Discord channels here. We can kind of get a running thing going, and we'll figure out what's best for everyone.
Like and subscribe, man. You're almost a YouTube influencer at this point.
You're
gonna have to get to your own channel.
Slowly. But anyways, let's see how that works here with the Rev thing. The window for claiming is going to close up here right away. Curious how that works. Lots of other things too that working towards with just with like some other engagement and activity ideas here. So hoping to just continue out here with a lot of that. So please stay tuned. I want to get some input and feedback here from the community. It's nice to see so many people, in here today, of course, and across all the platforms. All right. Thanks, everybody. We will chat with you very soon. Thanks again.